A new year means plenty of new opportunities for Nintendo to come in and surprise, delight, or disappoint its most hardcore, loyal fan base. And following the Nintendo Switch 2's first ever holiday on store shelves and middling sales for every major console this holiday season, today on Rantable, we will be running through the 5 big tips, 5 ideal scenarios for Nintendo in 2026 to assure this year is a good one. First tip, leave cross-gen releases in 2025. Free or cheap Nintendo Switch 2 editions of existing games can stick around, though, for a little longer. Cross-gen has been an interesting topic this entire console generation that kicked off in 2020 and has, I would say, hampered this generation from really feeling distinct. Like, it has a strong identity. And a lot of that also comes down to the fact that the Xbox Series consoles and the PlayStation 5 are kind of Xbox One and PS4 Pros in a way. Like, it is continuing a generation which already existed, and many are saying that the Switch 2 is doing the same for Nintendo. However, the leap in what is possible on the Switch 2 is so much wider of a gap between the Switch 1 and Switch 2 than we saw with any of the 2020 consoles that I feel it would make sense to fully embrace that moving forward. Some of the pillar releases for the Switch 2 in its first year on shelves so far have actually been cross-gen releases that did actually look pretty good on the original Switch, but they were undoubtedly better experiences on Switch 2. Now, of course, we still have some previously announced cross-gen games releasing this year, like Tomodachi Life, Living the Dream, and Rhythm Heaven Groove, but if we kind of just leave it there, no more new cross-gen releases, I would be very happy with that. Now, as far as Switch 2 editions of existing games go, I figure that's going to stick around for a little while, and I have not found the strategy of releasing these Switch 2 editions that egregious so far. So if that is a trend that continues, I would be more than okay with that, especially if it means getting some really great Nintendo Switch games looking and running just better. Tip number 2, give Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave a good trailer. Nintendo typically has a tier structure with their franchises, and I think that is most evident when we look at trailers for each of these different tiers, right? Like, we have the obvious high tier games that consistently have some of the greatest video game trailers of the modern age. I think at the top of that tier is The Legend of Zelda. Obviously, Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom have both received what many say are some of the greatest game trailers of all time. I say that, a lot of people say that. And I think it's kind of part of the reason that these games blew up to be as big as they got. And then beneath that, we have like the sports trailers that get their typical overview, their narration. And then we have games which could have good trailers and then end up getting Metroid Prime 4 trailers.
Psychic abilities. These powers allow Samus to operate mechanisms.
Now, Fire Emblem is a series that has seen a lot of momentum over the last 15 years or so. Ever since Awakening, pretty much, the series has been getting bigger and bigger, with Fire Emblem Three Houses reaching this peak point thanks to the large audience found on the Nintendo Switch and a very appealing premise with the military academy and the social sim elements of Three Houses, with Fortune's Weave coming up, with Fire Emblem being one of the most popular Nintendo franchises of today. Just look at Fire Emblem Heroes and how much money that thing makes. It will shock you. I think Fire Emblem on the Switch 2, positioned as the biggest game announced for 2026 as of right now, has a prime opportunity to really level up its status in the Nintendo pantheon, because people love gladiators. That's kind of the thing they're tackling with this one. It's following up Three Houses, which does have a very strong, passionate fan base to this day. And I think a great trailer, a trailer that is cut from the same cloth as those Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom trailers, can make Fire Emblem Fortune's Weave feel like the big deal it should be, rather than the way people seem to be brushing it off already. Tip number 3, surprise people. I think the secret sauce to any new console doing well, continuing to have a fervor around it after it launches, is relatively close to launch. You need to announce a game that has no shot of releasing the next couple of years. We saw this with the PlayStation 4 and the announcement of Uncharted 4, like the day after that console launched. For the first couple of years, that was the carrot on the stick of getting people to buy PlayStation 4s, thinking, oh, imagine Uncharted on a new generation of console. And we saw this with the Switch, with Metroid Prime, for better or worse, but especially as we've seen over the past few generations, for Nintendo fans, having that carrot on the stick can breed community and fan theories and this sense that we're building to something. Look no further than the lead up to The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom. Even though we ended up having to wait a bit of time to get our hands on the game, the theorizing about it, the revisiting Breath of the Wild, the debates about what the future of Zelda should be was a big deal and a regular talking point to inspire conversations and community in some of the lulls between major games. So considering this is a anniversary year for The Legend of Zelda, maybe the next Zelda is a good contender for this. After all, it feels like it's not a real Nintendo console launch until we see the next Zelda game that will be delivered to us at some point. Similar in sentiment to creating a momentum for a console, I think for Nintendo specifically, something that is important in the first half of any Nintendo console's life to maintain conversation, maintain hype, excitement, is the teases, the Sakurai trailers. So it is, I think, a good idea to talk about Smash Bros. Sooner than later. The safe bet is probably Smash Ultimate Deluxe. But knowing Masahiro Sakurai, the fact that we very well could have just gotten Smash 4 Deluxe on the Switch, and instead we got Smash Ultimate, I imagine the next Smash Bros. Game is not going to be a simple Ultimate Plus, Ultimate and New Fighter Pass season. But regardless of whenever they decide to talk about Smash, I think it needs to be early in the console's life cycle, early in the year, and if the current lineup of Nintendo Switch 2 releases for the year is actually pretty reflective of what we will end up getting, and there's not much more in there, a Smash Bros. Game coming in late 2026 or maybe first half 2027 can absolutely help make the conversation of the Switch 2 positive and exciting this year with, oh, what character is going to get added? What trailer could we get next? What game is this? Oh my gosh, a new Animal Crossing. Oh no, it's a Smash trailer. Like, they need that. They need that now more than any other time throughout this console's life cycle. The fifth and final tip today for Nintendo to have a strong 2026 is continue embracing the new and don't pander that much to the old. Looking at the current lineup of games Nintendo has for 2026, there is a handful of titles that stand out to me, specifically in the types of games they are and the audiences they're aiming to appeal to. We have two sort of like collaborative online single player but also multiplayer crafting type games with that test project they did throughout the last year or so that has been dark since the last online playtest, but more importantly, more directly and very soon, Pokemon Pokopia. Pokopia is not only taking the spotlight for kicking off almost the 30th anniversary of Pokemon, which is a completely separate topic for Nintendo in 2026, it's also delivering a Pokemon-themed version take on Minecraft, because this is coming from the same team behind the Dragon Quest Builders series. Basically, Minecraft with actual RPG progression, and slapping Pokemon onto that, bringing in the quirks of Pokemon, the whole Ditto aspect and copying abilities, is absolutely going to appeal to a lot of people. However, it does seem like the people it will appeal to are the people who grew up playing Minecraft. People like me who were there at the very early days of Minecraft, people today who are playing Minecraft as their main game. Combining that type of game with Pokemon is a recipe for success. This is absolutely going to be one of the biggest games of the year. And I can't help but feel that an older generation is absolutely going to ignore this game because they don't care for crafting, maybe they don't care for Pokemon. And when we look at some of the other games coming this year from Nintendo, like Splatoon Raiders, we don't know much about what type of game this is. It is not Splatoon 4, so one would assume it's not going to be the typical arena shooter 4v4 Squid Kid battles. But Raiders, to me, implies some kind of loot component. Ever since the announcement of this thing, where it's showing the Splatoon characters on this sort of desert island with maybe a storm in the distance. I have been feeling like it's going to be, hear me out, maybe some kind of version of an extraction shooter? Or like a survival co-op looter game? So it is, again, an idea, an IP that appeals to a younger generation of Nintendo fans, embracing a very new, popular genre, potentially. We'll have to see more, but that's the vibe I'm getting right now. And then to round off this trilogy of appealing to newer, younger, modern audiences, modern genres, we do know that Nintendo scooped up the next game directed by Hidetaka Miyazaki of FromSoftware, the Elden Ring guy, the Duskbloods, a game which shocked the world at the Switch 2 Big Direct because it looks like Bloodborne 2, but it's actually a multiplayer extraction adjacent game from what we know, with Bloodborne aesthetics. Capitalizing on that, the FromSoftware fever that has been all over the industry, I would say since Sekiro, but undoubtedly since Elden Ring, we have 3 games that Nintendo is looking to position in 2026 as major selling points of this brand new console that are appealing to new ideas, new generations, new genres, and I think that is a very good thing. So this is something I'm going to keep an eye on as we progress through the year and we see other Nintendo Directs, because I think there's opportunity for Nintendo to embrace even more new genres with new fun takes on things. Maybe it's time we get the Ice Climbers back as like a friend slop climbing game. There's a certain generational divide, people who will enjoy that and people who won't. But I think it's important. If anything, to me, it's very interesting, and I hope to see them lean more in this direction and more against the whole, let's remake Ocarina of Time a second time. Don't do that. That's your bonus tip. Don't remake Ocarina of Time. We don't need that. If you're investing that heavily in a traditional Zelda thing, just make a new Zelda. Don't even get me started on this. So we'll see what Nintendo has in store in 2026, what the current roadmap will look like once the year comes to an end, and we will probably revisit these ideas and see just how well the company did in the second year of the Switch 2's life. But what do you think of Nintendo's current lineup for the year? We of course have the 30th anniversary of Pokemon to account for as we look ahead, probably, hopefully, a brand new generation of Pokemon exclusive to the Switch 2. We have the Super Mario Galaxy movie, and many people are hoping that we get some kind of crossover game, but we will have to wait and see what is in store for Nintendo at the first major direct of the year. So let us know what you would like to see. What games are you most looking forward to from Nintendo this year? What do you hope to see the Switch 2 improve on in 2026? Be sure to let us know. Thank you so much for tuning in. For more episodes of Rantable, be sure to stay tuned here and over on GameRant.com, and wishing you a wonderful, happy new year.